Welcome to From the Mezzanine, a film podcast. I'm Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode 65. A slow January has us turning to our now favorite pastime, a director retrospective. In her own words, Kathryn Bigelow's exploration of film's potential to be kinetic is just a fancy way of saying that she makes action films. a less modest reading of the filmmaker might include things like transcending formula or ideological complexity or a hardline refusal to become the poster child for women in filmmaking. We'll kick off with her second feature, Near Dark. And the recently examined cult classic kind of serves as a proof of concept for the talent to come. But we won't be sticking in the past for the entire episode. We've got topical news, we've got timely reviews in the Watchlist, we've got a duo of non-film recommendations in the Mentionable, plus we'll top it all off by naming the one thing you should seek out this week above all others with Pick of the Week. Feel free to use the timestamps in the episode description to kind of jump around, but otherwise, Chuck, as a tease for what's to come, is there anything off the top that you wanted to say about Bigelow or Near Dark?
You know, that is one thing that I do just love about her, is that she eschews identity and is all about just what she is putting in front of you. I always respect that kind of base conviction from an artist these days, because so many others do nothing but lean into their identity to rationalize why you should care about them instead of the work itself. So if there's an underlining virtue behind Bigelow that I think all of her films, exemplify, it's that. And that's why I keep coming back to the lady, even if, she's kind of stumbled a bit more recently. But yeah, I'm really happy we're doing this. And the fact that I got an excuse to watch the main, movie we're talking about today. But first, we got to dig through some sticky territory. The Golden Globes just happened, the Critics' Choice Awards just happened, but there's kind of a wind that's growing coming from some cardinal direction. I don't know which. Oh crap! Wrong thing. Boop. There we go. Should award shows go gender neutral? That's the question. Because like maybe 10 years ago. I'm thinking, it was even more than 10. It was maybe 15 years ago. Scarlett Johansson popped up in some Drudge Report headline that I was looking at the time. And she was like, we shouldn't do actor or actresses. I want to compete with the men. And at the time, I was like, what is she talking about? The whole point is that it's separate. But it's more nuanced take from adult me. It would seem to me that this is maybe the right thing to do for a more egalitarian system. But, of course, it's not going to be that easy. Otherwise, everyone would do it. But where is this really coming from at this point? Why are we finally seeing traction for this movement?
Yeah, I think it stems from... I know recently the actor Asia Kate Dillon, who goes by they, them pronouns, said that they would prefer to be represented under the male category in, I think it was for Billions that they were on.
That actor. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, from John Wick. I think they were in one of the John Wick movies. And then also, more recently than that even, Emma Corrin has recently started using they, them pronouns, and they were nominated in 2021 for Princess Diana, and it was kind of they actually started using them after all of this stuff. They were nominated for all the awards, and then later that summer started using those pronouns, and so that's kind of the kickoff point. And then the Golden Globes being announced, the nominations, was the thing that kind of made a lot of think pieces pop up again, because that when the Oscar nominees are announced this coming Tuesday in 3 days, they're going to be gendered. So I think that's kind of what people are anticipating anyways.
So there's a possibility they could pull a curveball and just be like, oh, surprise, we're throwing away 100 years of tradition and we're just going to do it this way now.
I guess. I mean, I don't think so. I think that they still will be gendered, in a couple days here. But in all likelihood, they could just pull a fast one and be like, "Here's what you want" or whatever. And yeah, I mean, personally, I don't really see. I'm kind of taking the same stance you are in that I don't really see the point of the gender nominations. I was trying to think up, maybe some reasoning, and it was pretty
Yeah.
hard. The only thing I can really think of is, you know, it gives the opportunity for more people to be nominated, because that if they do ever go genderless, they're gonna drop it down to 5. Like it's not gonna be 10. I just hope people know that because it's gonna be 5 performances. It's not gonna be 10 performances over 2 categories. So I hope people know that because that's what you're gonna get.
And that is the pitfall, behind this, because in a given year, if we really wanted to do a test, go back to the 90s, say, and if we're trying to debate between whether you have 5 spots, so does Denzel Washington get on in lieu of someone like Daniel Day-Lewis in a given year, because that Meryl Streep is going to be in that category every single time, probably even multiple times, because she pumps out so many movies that people love. More than likely,
so it's really 4.
Yeah, it's really only
4 spots.
4 spots, and yeah, and then there's going to be it's I guess it might increase the prestige of being nominated, because fuck, it's tough. It gets even tougher to get up there. But it puts actors on the same playing field that all other categories already are. There's no such thing as best female director given out, or, best, male cinematographer. That's already something we don't see in other part. It's only in acting that they delineate the gender. And I'm usually not someone to go in this direction, but it makes sense to me, actually, after some contemplation, to go in this direction. But they may have to maybe also create some honorable mentions where it's you get a special honor. You just get called up. You're an also ran. You get a mini Snow White and the Seven Dwarves Oscar, or some other kind of award. You get a laurel instead. But there's got to be a way to spread the appreciation around, but then at the same time hallmark the top 5 of across all things. We could conceivably see only women get nominated in a given year if the men are just not bringing it. And you know what? So who cares? It's this is all made up. None of it really matters. It's not like we're talking about athletics or one-on-one combat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I was going to mention this anyways, that be careful for what you wish for, because I don't think that this moves the needle quite as much as people think it's going to.
Oh.
These problems, the problems that these categories are entrenched in are societal. They're on a societal level. We value male performance more than we do female performance on a societal level.
Yeah.
I mean, look at sports. Every male sports team is bigger than any female sports team. It's paid more attention to, yada yada. And so it's all on a societal level. So when this happens, if it does, here's what's going to happen. And we're already seeing this with the Gotham Awards and the other ones that have moved. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to start getting these headlines and these tweets that say, why are all 5 of the best performance nominees males this year?
Yeah.
Why is there only one BIPOC female nominated this year? Yada yada. You cut the head off the Hydra and 3 more pop up. So you get rid of one problem and another problem arises. So be careful.
Yeah, indeed. That's a very, very good point. And it was something that had occurred to me as well as inevitable in this day and age, because before you know it, the Sri Lankan contingent is upset that they aren't getting special highlight. You know what I mean? It gets parsed so finely, identity that eventually there's no difference between the tribalism of today than 1,000 years ago. After a certain while, we're just not killing each other anymore. But goddamn it, we send mean tweets. And keep an eye on the Supreme Court. There's actually an important free speech ruling that could potentially happen there. But as far as the Oscars and gender award shows in general, yeah, there's pitfalls here, and there'd probably have to be a lot of acceptance from a lot of people who think that, yeah, this would be a big win to get an institution such as this to, go in the direction you want them to, but there's unintended consequences.
There's also, just to kind of cap it off, honestly, in all honesty, like you said, this doesn't really matter. Do whatever you want, especially in light of this is the last Oscars that we're going to get that do not follow the Oscars so-called diversity guidelines that they came up with a couple years ago.
Which I took a closer look at those things. They are absurd.
Yeah. It is. It's pretty nuts. And that's something we'll probably talk about more this time next year. But I just want people to be aware of that next year, 2024 awards, those kick in. And so it's honestly like, do whatever the fuck you want, because this is the last year that you have any sort of credibility at all, because just go Google those. I'd invite anybody watching this, go Google those, Oscars diversity guidelines, and it just throws out any remaining credibility you had. And so that's kind of where I'll leave it.
Indeed. Because there's actually some exciting new things to look forward to beyond just the dumb things we do to make people happy. Because we also have the Sundance happening this year, which you covered remotely for us, which is pretty spectacular. Are you going to do that again this year?
No, I'm not. It's unfortunately, my interest in the festival is greatly diminished because they really tamp down on the number of films that they're doing the distanced festival for this year. And it's honestly, basically it comes down to, if it's a film that nobody would want to pirate or nobody would care to pirate, you can watch it distance. But if it's not, of course they're not showing Infinity Pool distance.
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks, because it's almost like they're saying thanks for keeping us afloat, distance people, thanks for giving us money in the past. Now we're going to go back to fucking celebrity worship and being way too expensive for anybody to afford other than millionaires, and stupid social media activations or whatever they're called. And so it kind of sucks because
Well, that said, what is there anything that does excite you that they got going on there?
Yeah, so I took a look at what's there, and I would say probably the new film from Corey Finley, who is the guy who did Thoroughbreds and Bad Education.
Hell yeah, okay.
That's called Landscape with Invisible Hand, and the sort of byline of it is a pair of teenagers come up with a plan to ensure their family's futures when an occupying alien race's promise of economic prosperity leaves most of humanity impoverished.
Oh, what the hell? That's fucking awesome. What a concept. Good God. There's a few that have been sticking out to me. I'm a whore for a good Sundance documentary, and someone is making one about Om Shinrikyo. Are you familiar with them? Yeah, the cult at the cult at the end of the world, the sarin gas attack people. So that's coming, and I'm also intrigued by this bodybuilding movie starring what's his name? Is it John David Not John David Washington. What's his name?
No,
I feel so terrible. He's in Creed 3. He's in Devotion. He was
Kang.
Yeah, he's Kang. He was in Lovecraft. I can't think of the gentleman's name. Jonathan Majors. This man's gonna probably win an Oscar for his homoerotic, roided out bodybuilder movie. And yeah, otherwise it seems like a lot of really twee. The people who liked Booksmart are going to be very happy by what's going on at Sundance this year. Not a lot jumped out beyond that. It looked really weird, I guess, is my spit take. if I have one.
Yeah, I also kind of made a check mark next to the Jonathan Majors movie because that actually premiered last night.
Oh, really?
And the reactions from it are really interesting. It's very divisive. A lot of people are saying it's a very upsetting film because he's essentially playing like one of those guys who like goes on like fitness message boards and is just like, you gotta just lift, bro. Girls don't like you because you don't lift, bro. You know, that type of guy.
Yeah.
And so he's
so,
like weightlifting incel sort of.
Yeah. Oh god, and like in those characters are fascinating. There's a number of like YouTube people that like I call them internet creatures. They're lol cows. And good god, like the fact that you have someone like him looking as cut as he does, I want to know where it's going. So, otherwise, like cat person, I have no interest in knowing what the fuck that is. You have to read the New Yorker to care about that. But this is Sundance. We're a far cry from when, like, you look at like when Reservoir Dogs was at Sundance. All the other movies that were there, we're a far cry from that level of variety and experimentation.
I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts of this. Is there anything that you saw that you're like, this is going to be the movie that some studio buys for like $20 million that's completely a misguided like awards bait purchase, or like, just the misguided like studio purchase? Is there anything that popped out to you for that?
Oh, there was quite a few actually. But the major one, God, I'm trying to find the name of it again.
The one that stood out to me as like the really really misguided like action film, or not action film, but like sci-fi film.
Okay.
It reminds me a lot of. Do you remember that Tom Hanks movie Finch from like 2 years ago?
Yes.
It reminds me of that because I think that movie was purchased at a festival and it just didn't move the needle at all. But the Pod Generation is what it's called.
Yeah. I was looking at that one too. Yeah, that one looked really weird.
Yeah, I just have a feeling that's going to be like the one that gets purchased and then just doesn't, is not paid any attention to. And then as far as like the completely misguided awards purchase, basically this year's Birth of a Nation. I don't know if you remember.
I do. That disaster.
Yeah. It's called Fairyland, and it's about a girl who is recounting growing up in the 80s in San Francisco with her gay father. And so I'm sure it'll have to probably do with the AIDS crisis and stuff. But it even has the girl from Coda, the main girl from Coda. So,
there you go.
I got a feeling about that one where that one's it's probably gonna get bought for like 18 million and then get dumped on Hulu or something.
See, what stuck out to me was a movie called Shortcomings, which will be heralded and loved by every Asian film critic in America, and will be.
Is that the Justin Chun movie?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all just interpersonal relationships. It's basically a milquetoast movie draped in an identity that people will herald as the best thing since Oxygen, and that shit always bores me. I also will probably not be watching the Kavanaugh documentary just because it will probably make my face melt off. But that's my problem, not anybody else's. If that is interest to you, definitely see it, because Sundance is home for good documentaries and typically the kinds of fare that the studios wait for the farm team to develop before they invest in. But one thing that did not need any hesitation for anyone to throw their money at, whether it was a studio or the audience that we are a part of here, is a little thing called The Last of Us, the first entry on our watch list this week. It's a video game, I hear. I remember playing like the first act of it on the PlayStation 3 back in the day, but then I never finished it, because I just, didn't have the inclination or the time. But this phenomenon has gone on and on. I understand you're pretty invested in, you've played the games. So who would you say this show is for right off the bat? Like, who did they make this show for?
Well, I think it's clearly for like old people, basically people who have no inclination to play video games. It's very clear that that's who this is targeting. It's I noticed that they're very, very hesitant to mention that it's like based on a video game. Like usually with that type of stuff, it's kind of front and center, but the only real mention of that in this is like a really quick thing in the credits that just says based on the game from Naughty Dog. And, it's very, they haven't been marketing it that way. It's not all over the posters that it's based on the video game. And so it's clearly for like old people.
Yeah, and I think the willingness to do that is because Neil Druckmann is the kind of person who wants to be taken so seriously that he, made a video game series in spite of the fact that he couldn't make a movie or a TV show. So now he gets to make the TV show he always wanted to make. And then you have Craig Mazin, who's someone I don't really have a lot of experience with, except for Scary Movie 3, apparently. But he seems like a guy who should know what he's doing. He was what all the shows he's been associated with, but his comments.
Well, it's just Chernobyl. I mean,
is that it? Okay.
If you look at the guy's credits, he made garbage before Chernobyl. Like you said, I mean, Scary Movie 3 is decent enough, but he made like Epic Movie and like he Meet the Spartans and shit like that.
Jesus, so he was the guy. He was the guy shoveling the shit into cinemas for years. Okay.
Yeah, he's only recently become like canonized as like a serious filmmaker.
Okay. Because he's made comments where he just seems so like this is obviously a man who has never played a video game, so he's the perfect guy to make the show they want to make. I guess is what I'm saying. He made a statement where he was just like, well, in the games, the people die and they're just pixels. Like, without any fucking self-awareness to what he fucking does for a living. You know what I mean? The whole point is that both mediums transcend the fact that they're just little light inside, like, little pieces of silicon. Like, come on, dude. Like, grow up. I know you think you're grown up, but you're being very childish right now and very pedantic. But, that said, did the show they made, is it any good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a very, very by the book adaptation. It gets all of the beats right. There's even stuff in there that is like ripped directly from the game, like shot for shot. But then it also kind of gives you like little bits that aren't in the game, just kind of stuff to build out the world, like the scene. I mean, the whole intro is majorly extended. Like that whole intro sequence with Joel's daughter is like literally 10 minutes in the game.
And it's almost a full episode's worth of content just with that opening act. I was really impressed with with their willingness to do that, to forego structure and form in that way, and just do it how they wanted to do it, because it really made everything I don't know, you're more entrenched in the world in the day that everything happens. And on like a second watch, there's a lot of great detail in there too. They're very deliberate in what they do, and for the most part it all works. And all that imagery that you're talking about from the game is all the stuff that I actually know. So it really hit me, that this is just a show where they did the right thing. They brought everything from the game that was inspired by cinema, or that was tailored towards the cinematic experience, and then they filled out everything that the gameplay brought to it with an actually good, good storytelling, good, I don't know. I'm very impressed with this show. They did a really good job with this show. And,
they did, yeah.
And
Oh, the other stuff I was going to mention was, the game doesn't have like that radio tower scene with all the people in line. That's not in the game. Awesome scene. The scene of the child like stumbling up to the gate and then being euthanized, like that isn't in the game. So
good.
there's all these all these things that are kind of just build out the world in interesting ways. And I mean, really, the only real like complaint I can think of, and it's not really necessarily a complaint because I don't know where it's going to go yet, but I kind of question their. They say that they changed the spores thing. The
Break that down for
like
me. I'm not sure I understand like what they've exactly done.
yeah, so in the video game, the virus or whatever it is, the disease,
The
it's spread.
cordyceps.
Yeah, cordyceps. It's spread through spores in the air that like the fungi are like giving off. And so there are certain parts in the game where you go into like enclosed spaces and you have to put a gas mask on because you can see like the spores like lingering in the air. Like that scene where the scene where they discover that person that's like attached to the wall. In that scene in the game, there would be spores everywhere and it would be all hazy and they would have their gas masks on because that's how the disease is communicable. And in this, I don't know, it's weird. It's not really, we're not really certain how it's spread yet. There's these weird like tendrils that come out of people's mouths, which isn't in the game. And so I'm just not sure that the logic really lines up there, especially with all the shit that they said in the intro scene about fungi, you know, that scene that took place in the 60s. So I'm not really sure the logic really lines up there with that. I have no doubt in my mind the reason why they didn't do the spores thing is because Pedro Pascal didn't want to have a fucking gas mask on for the entire show like he does in The Mandalorian. But
I think that hadn't occurred to me. That's a good point. Because I guess let's talk about him. You know, like he reminds me like more of like Josh Brolin in No Country for Old Men. His performance, you know, than anything else. But every time that motherfucker talks, I see the Mandalorian. He wherever he's on screen, he's just in armor, holding that girl or like doing, whatever stuff he's doing in this show. So that man is so betrayed by the success of that performance. Unfortunate for me right now. I have to get over it because he does do a good job in this. It's very subtle. There's a lot of subtlety to this show in general, but like does he do a good job of transposing the video game performance into something that he can work with?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the weird thing about his casting and then the casting of his brother, who is played by Gabriel Luna, is that they're both like I think Pedro Pascal is Spanish and then Gabriel Luna I believe is Mexican.
Okay.
And so it's very strange that like these are actors who they look Spanish, they look Mexican, but there's like really like deep Texas accents coming out of their mouth and it's just very strange. Like they sound like rednecks, but it's just strange. That kind of it didn't put me off, but it just when they first opened their mouths in the show, like in that like kitchen scene with both of them in the intro, I was like, oh, this is very strange because I see Joel, I see him playing Joel, but I want to think that he's gonna speak like Oberyn Martell or something like that.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, with some flavor, to the accent. But instead, we just get a guy who's just really good at logistics. He just wants to pour some concrete. He's a simple man. And, suddenly all hell breaks loose because the spore gets into the food supply and just is already inside of a majority of the population. And it's just because he just was too absent-minded to buy a birthday cake for himself that they didn't suffer the same fate. Like, that's the theory that I've seen thrown around a lot. Is that because there's lots of attention given to the fact that the main characters in that opening, section are avoiding things like cookies and biscuits, and they're just eating like eggs or like leftover takeout chicken, that kind of thing. And but once we get into the 20 years later, after the jump, we get to meet another character, the other lead of this story. Ellie, who has the casting of God, what's her name again? Bella Ramsey. Is for some people has proven controversial, but the whole reason behind her fame is because she gave a very feisty and memorable, performance playing a youth who's wiser beyond her years, or more mature beyond her years. So you'd think she was tailor-made for the casting. So I think she does a pretty good job, but what she does give the character, and what I guess the writing gives the character too, that I didn't get from the game, because I'm not even really sure if I made it to the part of the game that she's in. Now that I think about it, maybe I did. I don't know. But from what I know, I just didn't get the impression that she was like a psychopath. Because Bella Ramsey's Ellie gives off this energy like shit. Like she's gonna like gut somebody and enjoy it someday. Like, is that new, or is that always an underlying element to the character?
It is, or she kind of grows into that a little bit, because she's sort of forced to grow up really fast. In the games, the game Ellie presents more as, she presents younger than she is. Like, she looks younger, she has more like childlike features, and she kind of presents as like a little girl that is unexpectedly, like, could unexpectedly slit your throat, or could like unexpectedly kill you, even though she looks like a little girl. She's grown up extremely fast, and I think Bella Ramsey presents older to me. Like, she seems older just in general. She doesn't really have like the childlike features, and I would say it's pretty spot on. But it seems like the show is moving faster, because Ellie isn't this, like, she's not this crazy at the beginning of the game.
Because like when they mention the fact that she's like a foundling thrown into like a military academy, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, the military dictatorship is raising an army of psychopaths. It makes sense that she's like this. So I guess it tracked for me, but that's me coming in, with very little, baggage from, the original, source material. And that's why I asked you who this show was made for initially. Because as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am having no hang-ups. It's like everything is being presented well and it's making sense. And I'm interested in where it's going. Like, they earned everything that they did. But at the same time, throughout it, I'm reminded why I don't like Neil Druckmann, and why I find him like insufferable as like a celebrity figure. But he did do something good though, so there's a reason for his megalomania, and it's because he created this, partially, depending on who you talk to.
He definitely is a kind of a megalomaniac. He thinks that he's smarter than he is, I think. And the nice thing about this one, about the first game and then this first season of The Last of Us, is that he actually had a co-director. And I don't know if you've seen any of this in the press, but the guy's name is Bruce Straley, and he was the co-director on the first game. And he has been on a tour, saying that he is pissed that he wasn't credited in the show. And he probably should have been, because Neil Druckmann, the first Last of Us game, is not a 100% Neil Druckmann, mind creation. It's also a part of, and so that kind of sucks in my opinion. And if people are really put off by Druckmann, it's only going to get worse, because when this show gets to the Last of Us Part 2 stuff, that is like 100% his like headcanon. And so
that's probably when I'm gonna not watch the show any further, because like that's really what puts me off from touching the first game either, because I know where it goes. And I don't know, man. Like, that's a conversation for another time. Exactly what because I haven't played the game, but I understand why I shouldn't play it. I can't appreciate the story or his headcanon in the same way he can, or that other people do. So, because this might just be a show that I abandon after one season, and I might be totally satisfied with that. And that's just what might end up happening.
Yeah, but, I mean, the first game wasn't made with a sequel in mind, so where the first game ends is all you need if you really want to. I mean, it ends, but this is one thing I'll say, and I was coming into the show prepared to say this, that if you aren't somebody who plays video games, and you had no intention of ever playing the game, I guess that really can't be helped. But what I will say is it's such a shame that they didn't get the PC port of this game out in time for the show. I think it comes out March 3rd is when that comes out, which is I think between like episodes 7 and 8 of this season. So it's like I don't know why they didn't time that better, but
they must know more than we do, I guess.
Yeah.
Like they expect those episodes to really be hype and really be
to really get you to play the games. Yeah. But here's what I'll say about if you're somebody who has access to a PlayStation system past the PS2, a PS3, PS4, PS5, and you haven't played this game, go out and play it because as good as the show is, everything about the game is better.
Yeah.
The game is, in my opinion, the performances are better. It's better in the fact that you're the one playing it, so you're making, you're forced to make all the decisions, and it's kind of a shame that if somebody goes into this show and this is their first exposure to this short story, it's a shame that is the case because the game is better in every way, and it's almost like you're getting the 9 out of 10 version of this story rather than the 10 out of 10 version. So,
and I think that I champion what you've said because I was feeling that during that very thrilling sequence when they're fleeing their zombified town and the planes are crashing into the earth. As I was watching it, I was like, yeah, this looks really cool, and it probably took a lot of effort to make this Alberta town go through all of this shit, for this part of the show. But all that I could think as I was watching it was this was so much more exciting when I had a controller in my hand, my palms were sweating, and it was on me to not die. And then the gut punch of the daughter getting shot and dying. We just gone through all of that. I had just gone through all of that. So what the statement, I guess what we've learned from watching this show is that you can't beat a excellent, transcendently good gaming experience with a cinematic one. It can't quite equal the urgency and everything that happens when you are part of the experience versus just an observer. But that said, we're going to be watching this show. We'll check back in with it when it's all done. I think unless something really kooky or awesome happens in between, then we might talk about it. But that said, I'm a lot happier with it than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
And our next entry on the watch list is also something that I did not think I was going to enjoy, but for some reason I watched it all the same. And this is the latest rollout from Atomic Monster and Blumhouse. Of course, the viral sensation Megan, Me Thregan. I don't know how you're supposed to say it. That's the joke. But this is a pretty disposable, pretty simple little horror movie. It's very satirical. It's very funny, and it doesn't overstay its welcome in any regard. Like no joke gets tired. They don't repeat stuff more than they have to. And by the end of it, I was very satisfied. You got Allison Williams in a very thankless role as a character who's terrible, who's suddenly made responsible for her young niece because her brother-in-law didn't put the snow chains on his tires, and they live in Montana on a mountain, so of course they die a horrible death getting run over by a snowplow. That's how the movie begins, and then suddenly you're with Allison Williams and she's working at some hip toy factory that makes really awful like Furbies, basically, like smart Furbies. In Bluey, there's a toy called Chattermax that these things are exactly like. Like they shit and they yell and they run around the house, and like these are real toys that exist in the real world too. But in this, it's like a companion thing, and she's being expected by her bosses to bring out a basic version of it, but secretly she's been using all their money to make Megan, the ultimate thing for the millennial and Gen Z parent. It's a robot that takes care of your kids for you. That's what Megan is. And she thinks it's such a good idea. Her boss doesn't, but then she realizes, oh, I have this fucked up kid I don't want to take care of, so I'm going to make my creation do it for me as a proof of concept. And of course, it doesn't go right. And Megan as a character is realized so effectively. There's always something uncanny about her, even when there's actually a human girl playing her. The way that she moves and everything, it can go from looking real to totally unnatural, just like at the blink of an eye. But it's all done to great effect. And I recommend seeing this when it becomes available to you, or if you find yourself with nothing to do on a day off. Because this was way better than it had any right to be. And I want the unrated gore cut. Because the screenwriter has come out and said, yo, they wanted something that the kids could see. Because TikTok got excited. So now they're going to put out the version that was originally written. Where there's a lot more kills and it's a lot more brutal. And I'm excited for that version. But at the same time, I worry that all that ghoulishness might ruin the charm. At all the same, I champion this, and I want more of it. Give me Megan 2, Megan 3, Megan to Infinity. Because I don't know why, but nothing about this that typically would annoy the shit out of me did. I can't explain it.
Yeah, it seems to me like this movie was sort of made in the same vein that Orphan First Kill was, where it's a movie that nobody expected to be good, but it was surprisingly good. And I'm glad you brought up the thing about the unrated cut, because that's been one of the big talking points with this movie. And I guess I need to ask you, because they did have the film originally as rated R, and then they cut it down. So is that noticeable? I'm just kind of curious. Like, are there scenes where Megan is about to embed an axe in someone's head, but then the camera cuts right before it hits the person's skull? Is there stuff like that in there?
They do a very artful job of masking what what should be there. Like, it almost seems like they shot two different versions of the same movie. And then the executives just decided which one they wanted to go with. Because it wasn't just, they cut a few frames here. It was like the camera did a very deliberate thing. Or they shot something very deliberately out of frame. But they give you really awesome sounds. Like, it still is a very, I wouldn't take a child to this. You know what I mean? But yeah, if you're like a 12-year-old, this is great for a sleepover. Because but I have to say, have you heard about the really, really bizarre lullaby sequence where she sings Titanium?
No.
Oh my god. It comes out of nowhere. This little girl is having this fucking existential crisis about her grief, and she knows that this doll is murderous. She has seen it kill a boy already at this point. Not to spoil alert, she kills people. But then Megan just sits down with her and is just yo, everything's gonna be all right, girl. I'm here. And then she sings Titanium. It's the most bizarre thing in the world. And then we never return to that again. We don't have another sing-along sequence. But it's just very prominent, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And
it's kind of, this is from the screenwriter of Malignant, so I would expect no less than shit like that.
And we got the man himself up there, Jason Blum, putting his money where his mouth is, cosplaying as Megan at the premiere. But yeah, I was a lot happier than I expected to be, and I had a lot more to say about it. Now we're going to move on to some quick hits on the watch list. We got you up first to talk about the conclusion of Mark Bowles' Apple TV series, Echo 3. Did this go anywhere satisfying?
Yeah, I think so. The last time I mentioned this, there was still 2 episodes to go, and now it's all done now. And kind of like any season of Game of Thrones, episode 9 was the big blowout, the big compound raid, and so that was the really exciting one. Really, really great stuff. And it's kind of interesting though, because at the end of episode 9, you feel as if everything's wrapped up. You know, everything's done, all the plot threads are closed, but there still was an episode 10. And so the 10th episode kind of just seems, it's a little meandering to me, but this show kind of taken as a whole is kind of a show of great episodes and then just okay episodes. And it never is outright bad. It's always a fun time to watch, but there are very specific episodes I can point to and say, these are the great ones. And then these other ones are kind of the okay ones. And I mean, for anybody who's watched the show, I'll tell you right now, it's episodes 2, 3, 6, and 9. And so if anybody has seen it, they'll know the ones I'm talking about. And but overall, taken as a whole, I think it was worth it. And I was under the impression this was a limited series, but I noticed something kind of weird in that on Apple TV Plus, they changed where it says on the 10th episode, it used to just say finale, and then they changed it to say season finale. So I don't know. I guess we're going to get more of this, which I'm not sure is necessary, but
Or yeah,
it was good. It was
so
it was very good.
Is Luke Evans's character like at least worth coming back to? Like, is he an operator, kind of like John Clark for Tom Clancy fans?
He is, yeah. He's probably the standout of the show. I think honestly, the weak point of the show is Michael Huseman, who is Dario Naharis from Game of Thrones. I don't know. I don't think he's a very good actor. I know that he used to be like a model, and he's in a lot of like perfume commercials and stuff like that. And he, Game of Thrones was like his big like break, but I don't know. He's okay. But I would give a shout out to Luke Evans. He's awesome. And then also James Udom, who plays like their handler. He's the guy from the diner episode of Sandman who just wants to eat a cheeseburger.
Okay,
if you'll recall.
Okay,
he has the Asian wife, and he's like their handler in the show, and he's awesome. He's like the guy who gets them all their gear, and like in some parts he like participates in like their sort of, because they're basically in Colombia, like under the eye of the government. They're basically trying to they're running a false flag operation basically.
Oh, okay.
And,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty. It goes places, and taken as a whole, the show was really, really good. And like I said, I don't know if we need a second season, but I'll probably be there to watch it.
Mark Bull, relevant, to this episode, since we are discussing Kathryn Bigelow. They did win Oscar Gold together.
Yeah.
I'll have to, if I ever get Apple TV Plus again, and I know I will, because it's just whenever season 4 of For All Mankind comes out, they know I'll come crawling back. But Peacock, I gave them my allegiance recently, and they have my commitment for a year, and we'll see if I renew. But they keep on giving me these weird little movies. Then I don't have a lot to say about the movie itself, because it's pretty disposable. There's no one in it. I don't know. It seems like a weird trend, because this is just a script that I can't believe got made, because it's sick. Okay, it's it's a COVID horror movie, a slasher movie, coming to us from one of the guys behind Scream, actually, now that I remember it. So this is one of the OGs. This is a guy, he's capable. So it's not just a nobody, but the cast are nobodies. And they just throw them into this weird little movie about some people who were asymptomatic carriers of COVID and got some people sick at a party. And because some people were at a party, the butterfly effect led to someone dying. And then there will be great vengeance reaped upon them. Because the whole time you're watching these people like go away to their family's lake house and have their stupid, Gen Z college kid problems, relationship problems. There's just these people in black stalking them and going into their house, stealing their phones. And it's the family of someone who died of COVID killing them because they were at a party. And throughout the movie, she's just like coughing, but being like, oh, I'm checking my symptoms, I'm fine. And the implication is that, she kind of deserves to be hunted down and murdered because of what she's done, or maybe the idea is that the killers themselves are just fucking crazy because they are, lunatics on the other, fringe of it, who blame, anybody they can for the fact that their loved one also went to the fucking party and got sick too. They didn't stay home either, so whose fault is it really? I don't know. Like, it's a bizarre little flick, and I would only recommend it if you were stoned or drunk and, eating a pizza. That's the only time that this would ever be consumable for most people. But it's just a strange thing to put out into the political world that we live in, where it's giving like so many conflicting, like ideological, like dog whistles and signposts. I'm just like who are you trying to say is the bad guy here? I don't know. But as a horror movie, it's effective until it isn't, and then it just gets downright silly.
Sure.
It's just
I was sort of interested in this because of Kevin Williamson's involvement, and I don't know though. I'm not sure that he has any sort of talent without Wes Craven backing him up.
It doesn't seem like it, because it's very slight. Like it's like watching a little kid trying to lift, like something heavy, and they're like, struggling with it. Like they know what they want to do, but they lack the capacity to actually get it up over their head. Mm-hmm. Something that was more effective, though, for me, was Kai, the Hatchet wielding hitchhiker, who I only found out about because of an Oregon crust punk named Heather, who I met in Eugene, Oregon back in the day, because we were Facebook friends, and when this guy first went viral, she was like, holy shit, my boy Kai, love that dude, because she was exactly like him. She was a broken, love you, Heather, but I'm not using your last name, but you just went through some shit, and you were out on the streets. You were just one of those lost kids in the Pacific Northwest, because that's what this is about. And he got internet famous for a little bit, and I didn't really track the story after that, and it's pretty crazy. Some people probably know it pretty well at this point, but this movie doesn't do a really good job of digging into who Kai actually is or was, like at that time in his life, what his story really was. And it's strange because they had the real people, like his mother and his family members, being interviewed, but they never probed into like how he turned out the way he did and why his family let him go like that. You know what I mean? And so it's very like surface level, but it gives you a really entrenched look at how the Hollywood fame apparatus kind of works with internet personalities. You meet some talent wranglers, and people who get a hold of people for Jimmy Fallon or what's his name, Jimmy Kimmel, more specifically, because that's the show he was supposed to appear on. So it's interesting on a showbiz level. It's interesting just as a cultural thing, but we don't really get to know our subject well enough to really understand why we got the story we did. So Netflix is kind of slipping, but I guess this is more so how Netflix has been for a while. We're not getting like Tiger King even, it only did so well because it gave its subject so much time. But yeah, Netflix has been commissioning a lot of these kind of lower effort fare, and this slides into one of those buckets.
So it's essentially just like a recap of events, basically. It's like, here's what happened and here's how it happened, and it's just like a sequence of events, but it never really dives into it at all. Like
they flirt with it, but then they turn away because they're more interested in the spectacle of it. Instead of like Werner Herzog, this is not, okay. Like we're not staring into the abyss of the individual. Yeah, we're just looking at how it affected, this lady who, was trying to create a reality show with him. Like that's what they're more concerned with. And that's usually what Netflix things do. Like that Don't Fuck with Cats documentary. It's all viewed through the eyes of just some random terminally online cat woman. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But now the time has come for the main event of our show, where we will dive into Kathryn Bigelow's Near Dark. Take it away, Matt. Bring us in.
Yeah, so this is our first film we're going to do on Kathryn Bigelow. So I'll just kind of give a little bit of backstory here. She started her filmmaking career in the early 70s by jumping coast to coast. She was originally a painter from San Francisco, but changed her career path shortly after moving to New York City, which perhaps was after some exposure to her roommate, Julian Schnabel, which is a really interesting fact in my opinion. After receiving her master's from Columbia, Bigelow was quick to make a short film, which was 1978's The Setup, and then one feature film, 1981's The Loveless. Both led to her receiving a significant boost in budget for her next film and talent. 1987's Near Dark. It's going to be kind of impossible here to avoid the comparisons to James Cameron, so I'll start now by saying, like Terminator, Near Dark is kind of a flawed gem that hints at greater things to come. Bigelow surrounded herself with talent that sort of rose with her. You've got actors Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen, cinematographer Adam Greenberg, and special effects supervisor Gordon Smith. There are weak links in the chain, however. The script by Eric Red and Bigelow is at times atrocious, and the lead performances from Adrian Pasdar and Jenny Wright leave something to be desired. Despite this, the recent rediscovery and canonization of this cult classic is deserved in my opinion, if only to draw a direct line of influence between Bigelow and some younger female directors such as Catherine Hardwicke and Karen Kusama. What did you think of Near Dark, Chuck?
I was really quite taken with it. It has a grit, certainly, but it also has a rural, rustic elegance at the same time. It's like at its best moments, it embodies the best of like a fusion of all the genres that she's playing with, horror, westerns, but also just like road movies and like outlaw movies, like the outsider, sort of experiences and narratives. And yeah, like this was there was a period of time where it actually wasn't uncommon to see and this was the one entry in it, but I'm also reminded of even American Psycho as well, where you had a female director who shed her identity and was just purely an artist for a moment as far as the audience can discern. Because you put this movie in front of somebody and maybe they could figure out that a woman had directed it, but I doubt that really would have mattered to anybody. And I think that's the power of this movie. Its story is very horrifying. Like, it does a good job of digging into its concepts, but it certainly is a little rough around the edges, which is why it didn't quite succeed as well when it first came out as much as it has been appreciated now. Because there's a lot of gold in this nugget, but you got to chip away at some stuff to find it.
Yeah, definitely. It's just a mix of some things that are extremely well done and then some things that are not so much. And originally, it's been said that Bigelow wanted to make a Western, and you kind of had mentioned the setting in that it's an interesting, the South, particularly I think like Oklahoma, is an interesting setting for this movie because in some parts, as a neo-Western, it's a very generic setting for a Western, but it's not a very generic setting for a vampire movie, which is what this movie is, both of those things. So you have all this really interesting imagery. They play a lot with the sunlight in this movie, and in this like middle of nowhere desert, you can't escape the sun. If you're a vampire and you're outside and the sun's coming up, good luck finding a place where you can go, because it's nothing but dry plains. And it's interesting in that fact too, and like how they have all these little small towns that they kind of use as like the small Western town from like a Western from like the 1950s, where it's the middle of the night and there's nobody on the street. Everybody's everybody's gone to bed.
Yeah.
But these vampires are using this main street in this town as like the place where they're gonna have their duel or their shootout. And it's kind of I love the setting. And you have the oil derrick scene. I love that. The first time that May gives her blood to Caleb. And behind them, you have these oil derricks that are dredging up oil, and sort of it's juxtaposing those two images. The sucking of the blood with the sucking of the oil from the ground, and so I really appreciate it for that.
Yeah, the ruralness of it, gives them a lot. Yeah, you don't see vampires in a lot of the settings that they're in, biker bars, or like. With like those like bungalow hotels, that like seriously have the only people who have ever stayed there was like 50 years ago, like, and the last time it was the vampires themselves. That's how infrequent you see things in these towns. I lived in a town like this, and I think that's kind of why like I was able to just understand the mindscape of Caleb. Literally having nothing to do, because that's all the kids do in little farm depots. They just drive around, they bum beer off each other, and if they're lucky, someone's like having a bonfire somewhere. And unfortunately for Caleb, he catches the sight of a little girl in jean shorts who is giving him the eye, and of course he's gonna bite that apple and pay the price for it. But like, how did you think they handled explaining the rules of vampirism in this? Was it a little too straightforward, or did they do a good job of this kind of like showing it versus just having someone just vomit out an explanation?
Yeah, it's an interesting interpretation, because it's almost like there are certain rules that this version of vampires abide by, and then there's certain ones that they don't. And it's mostly, there's a huge focus, like I said, on the sunlight aspect of it, vampires not being able to go out during the day. But then there's other smaller stuff that's only hinted at. Like, we know that religious imagery, specifically crosses, don't affect them, because Lance Henriksen's character has crosses on like the grip of his guns, and so it's like he obviously that doesn't affect them. And then there's other stuff too that they don't even pay attention to. They don't even bother setting up. Like, we don't know if these particular vampires are reflected in mirrors, because nobody ever looks in a mirror in the movie, or nobody ever looks in a reflective surface. So it seems like there's certain rules that they're abiding by, and then certain ones that they're just like, no.
Yeah, it's whatever works in the service of I guess the scene in question. And in a majority of these scenes, I guess the whole point of this is you are kind of like Interview with the Vampire. You are riding with the vampires, and I guess was that different at the time? Was that unique to like actually have the protagonist be amongst the villains, as it were, to be amongst the monsters, and to have the story basically be about him trying to hang on to his humanity, in spite of the what has been done with him, and what is being expected of him?
Yeah, I think it was. I think up until this time period, vampires were very like, gothic, and, very, very fancy, and very like sexual. And, you don't get much of that in this movie. And then in like the late 80s, you had all these movies pop up that made vampires gross and dirty and disgusting. And between like this and then, oh God, what's it called? The one with Kiefer Sutherland, Lost Boys.
Yeah.
Lost Boys. So those two movies I think came out within like 5 months of each other. So yeah, it's definitely a unique thing to like the late 80s.
Okay. Because that's what made the movie work for me, ultimately made the story work. Because I even didn't mind the happy ending and how convenient it was that you could just reverse this. And that's what and I guess ultimately, is this a movie about like drug addiction when you get down to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's about drug addiction and the sort of the lost youth of the late 80s where kids started growing up really fast in the 80s and to tie it to drugs, you had Dare and stuff like that and so kids were learning about drugs a lot faster about what they are and what they could possibly do to you. And so I think it's about drugs and it's about sort of the lost youthfulness.
Yeah,
Kids having to grow up very fast.
and AIDS was kind of becoming a thing. The same thing was happening with sex. They were having to learn about that.
Mhm.
Culture was getting a lot more sexual and permissive, and yeah, so yeah, in the heartland especially, it's like there was a degeneracy, a rot, and yeah, this is kind of looking into that because usually you think, oh, you're in bumfuck Oklahoma, of course it's there's going to be a wholesome edge to this story, but like the as desolate as the land is, so can be that of a man's soul, and I guess that's also like there's a richness to this movie that I guess we're both kind of identifying. There's depth and a lot more to it than just one sequence of grotesquerie after another. But getting in the flow of how they operate and their lives and everything, it's you learn to love these monsters by the end of it, and you empathize with them, and at the same time you get the impression that Bigelow is saying that you being a monster and remaining one is a choice. Like you're I guess, or just I guess the addiction metaphor played out, but you don't expect that from what just looks like what would have been something on a VHS rental shelf. That you wouldn't have, you thought you just would have been getting something more akin to like Sick, or Megan, where it's just ooly ghoulies. Like this was trying to make you think a little bit more.
Yeah, and I guess speaking of monsters, I wanted to call out specifically that bar scene that you mentioned earlier. Probably the best in the movie, in my opinion. Everything kind of comes to a collision at that point where you can tell that they spent a lot of money doing a music licensing for that scene because there's like three different like songs that play, including a song by the Cramps or a cover of the song Fever by the Cramps, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have just this amazing like scene of the vampires kind of toying with their prey and kind of killing off these guys one by one, and you have the lighting of the fan blades going over Lance Hendrickson's face as he's standing in the corner and just watching it all play out, and just an amazing scene. And yeah, I just have to call that out because it's really one of the best of the movie, and there's multiple scenes like that too that are, I mean, almost just as good, like the motel shootout,
Yeah.
and how the sunlight is creating little rays, or the bullet holes are creating little rays of sunlight that they're getting burned on and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
It played with the rules that they were following very well. Like it didn't, I don't know, I didn't really feel like they cheated too much. Even because when he's running out with this like a blanket covering him to get to the bus or get to the van, he is literally on fire.
Yeah.
Like, and it is just their like healing factor that makes it, okay, makes it recoverable. And so maybe that is the cheat, because when the shot when Bill Paxton's Severin like just like peeks, opens the curtain, and they realize, oh fuck, it's still daytime and the cops have found us already, and his like half his face just gets melted off. That really took me by surprise. But then like the next scene, his face is fine again because it just grows back. But that bar sequence was so menacing. So yeah, but just the centerpiece, that because that's the thing, the ending. Did the ending really give you as good of a thrill as the bar sequence did, or was it just kind of a like you expect the showdown to play out the way it does, the boss battles at the end of the movie?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's probably not as good as that bar scene, but I do like the ending because it's so like, the effects of this movie are amazing too for practical effects. They reportedly, the way that they did like the smoking effects of like their skin smoking, I guess, was like they hooked up an apparatus to the actors that just consisted of 5 lit cigars, and they put it in their jacket, and then they just had to cover it, and so it's all real smoke,
Oh
and
my
so
God.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
And
that's some Robert Rodriguez special effects.
yeah, and so
Efficiency shit.
yeah, and it's amazing, and to answer your question, that whole ending sequence, the effects are, and what's going on is so amazing, because this movie contains like 3 of like cinema's best explosions, like between the semi truck blowing up, and then the child vampire
Yes.
imploding, and then the station wagon blowing up, and then it continues rolling along as the doors are falling off. It's just it's incredible how that stuff plays out, and even the smaller stuff, like when May decides she's gonna turn on her vampire family, and she grabs Caleb's sister and jumps out the back window of the station wagon. You can totally tell that was all done practically.
Yeah.
Like a person actually jumped out of the window. And so, yeah, I would say the ending gave me, a good enough thrill.
And those explosions, like they are almost even better than what we get from like the Hurt Locker, years later, from this woman. But she just knows a thing or two about blowing shit up. I don't know, I don't know how someone who's going to art school winds up, playing with fire so much. It's very interesting. Oh God. But God, there was something I was gonna say, and I lost the thought. That happens sometimes. I got the thread because of how tangible this movie is. The effects, the fact that it's just they are in this tiny town, this forgotten, desolate part of America, and they're just having fun, crashing semis, and basically just using this town like they played with this town more than the Last of Us guys did with their Alberta town. Like they took over when they made this thing. And James Cameron is in this movie just driving by, flipping off Bill Paxton, just having fun, doing his thing. And then he goes on into the future to only make movies in the most impractical and least real ways possible. It's just funny to me that's such a virtue of this movie, and it's something that he just hates. It's like he doesn't want to be bound by reality. It's that's interesting. What were you going to say?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's impossible to kind of not compare him with Bigelow, because obviously, I mean, they were married, and she went such a different direction than he did, and yeah, it's interesting, that fact. But what I was going to mention was I couldn't let this review go by without mentioning Bill Paxton, because
look at that magnificent bastard.
He's incredible in this movie. I mean, he apparently ad-libbed a lot of his lines, and he was so good at that. I mean, he's good at that in Aliens too, and he is just like the beating heart of this movie. His character, he's so fun to watch, and yeah, his lines are so good when he's just I hate it when they don't shave when he's gonna bite that guy, and when he just says "Howdy, mind if I rip your face off?" or whatever. It's just he's amazing to watch, and such a loss that he died so young. And
we're 5 years gone from our Billy boy, because I love him as an actor. I don't think he's ever been in a bad movie. I'll let someone challenge me on that, because he just elevates everything he's in. And there's a reason why he's on the poster. Why, when you Google this movie, what you see is his burnt out visage. Because he delivers the goods. He's this foul mouthed, Confederate vampire who has sharpened stirrups on his boots that he uses to ballet slice people's throats open with. What more do you need? That bar sequence when he walks up to that shit kicker and he's just like, It's like, I fucked your mother in the back of your daddy's pickup, and he watched, and he liked it. And that guy is just so fucking terrified, and he's just like, what do you want, man? I'm not going to get mad at you. I don't care what you say. And then he just keeps on saying even more degenerate, awful shit to get a rise out of this guy. Like, yeah, like he's the reason, really, to watch this movie. Beyond just the Bigelow appreciation, we get more from our man when he was young and virile, before he just turned into, the elder statesman character actor period of his career. Good shit. Because Lance Henriksen killed it as well. Like,
yeah, he's great.
He's like that. His villain is one of the best in cinema history. That man is such a chameleon. He's so evil, like at least like acting evil, and he was a worthy final boss for Caleb at the end of that movie.
Yeah, and all the little like things they do with his character as far as development, like when he talks about how he fought in the Civil War for the South. And then there's even like that throw. I don't know if you caught this, but there's a throw it away line where Bill Paxton's talking to Lance Henriksen's character, and he says like, "This reminds me of that fire in Chicago," and they're clearly talking about like the Great Chicago Fire of like 1870 or whatever it was, and so it's like inferred that they started that fire, or something. But,
exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's just great subtle world building. You tell an entire story just with a single, hey man, you remember when? And it's not obnoxious when they do it, because it's genuinely like, oh fuck, that tells me quite a bit about these two, instead of just, but it's at the same time, I crave more from this universe now. And I know that we're not likely to get a sequel out of this woman anytime soon. But if there's ever a show that I would appreciate them doing a TV series adaptation of, give me a Near Dark TV show. That would be so fucking cool. Make it an anthology. Give me a different story in a different part of the country from a different part of history. But make it in this style. Make it with this spirit. And it would be really fascinating to watch, I think.
It would be, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the sort of final points I wanted to hit on was, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, because from what I could tell researching this movie, well, the studio went bankrupt after the movie came out that put it out. And then on top of that, the rights of this movie are so like in limbo for some reason. And I don't know exactly why, but
it's so funny.
This movie is so hard to find. You can't rent it digitally or buy it digitally. It's not the discs aren't in print, and it's the whoever does own the copyright is so litigious about taking down people talking about it. I know like Red Letter Media had a review up that got taken down, and it hasn't been re-uploaded since.
Really?
And yeah, it's crazy how like litigious they are, the people who own this. And so, in some ways I'm very, very scared for our episode here, but there was a 4K Blu-ray that was announced in June 2021 that is completely MIA. Nobody knows anything about it. And the one DVD, I don't know if you looked at this, the link.
It's atrocious.
It's so bad. Yeah. It looks like Twilight.
And that's what's, awful about it, because that was the only reason they commissioned it. And guess what? It can be yours to own for 50 fucking bucks.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. I just want to, I'm going to very quickly download this and throw it up, just because it's so it's so ridiculous. Look at that shit. Look at that thing. It's so
it doesn't
bad.
It doesn't even look like the two leads. Like it's like they photoshopped them so much that it looks like a modern day movie or something. Yeah,
it's like, how did they even find the frame? It's like, it's almost like they had AI art do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's how uncanny it is. But
it's nuts. But go watch it on Shudder though, because the weird thing is, one of the few places you can watch this movie is on Shudder, and so go seek it out, because it's definitely worth it.
And I this is my last little thought. It's a little bit of a segue, like a digression. Because this movie reminds me a lot of another I guess like this was a '90s like rustic Western vampire movie called The Reflecting Skin. Have you ever heard of that or seen it?
No.
Because they're very much in the same sort of headspace. It almost, The Reflecting Skin almost is like an inspiration for American Vampire, that Scott Snyder series, because there's greaser, like rockabilly vampires in it, but it's Viggo Mortensen, and it's from the perspective of children, so it's unique, but it reminded me a lot of Near Dark reminded me a lot, even though they're very different movies, I'll be clear. But that one is also very hard to find because Harvey Weinstein had a beef with the filmmaker. So the only place you could buy it was a European, DVD. That was the only way to see that thing. So I think it's funny that they both wound up being in such strange circumstances, because it's always, it's not the movies you would expect to, like, kind of like, what was that evil? Was it that day? Was it Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead? Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead. It's just like, why that movie? Well, there might be a fun story there, but otherwise, yeah, definitely check this out. Any last comments to make?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I kind of alluded to in my intro, this film is really laying the groundwork for her career, and this shows, that she has talent, and I think we're gonna see it in the weeks going forward.
Okay, right on. So that moves us on to the pick of the week. Given everything that you watched this week, what do you think people should give their time to? Their valuable 2 hours.
I'd probably say go watch The Last of Us, but play the damn video game.
Play the damn video game?
Yeah, first. I guess I wanted to just hit on that point again. Yeah. That I really do think that it's kind of a shame for people who have access to the game, or people that have an inclination to even play video games. I know that there's some 60-year-old man out in like Oklahoma somewhere named Clyde who will never pick up a video game, who's probably watching The Last of Us TV show and it's his first exposure to this. But if you are inclined to play games and you have access to a PlayStation console, play the game, then watch the show.
Well, dang it, Hank. I'm in the same boat to a point, but I would ask people to watch Megan. I think we should support that kind of free-spirited, fun, non-preachy sort of cinema experiences, even if they're disposable. I love me some popcorn, and as meaty as of subjects as we had between like The Last of Us and Near Dark, I gotta give my shout out to Megan. But we also got a couple mentionables. And while I shrink it, why don't you talk to us about yours?
Yeah. So my mentionable this week, a little bit more intangible, but it's Paul Walter Hauser's appearance on AEW Wrestling. And I don't watch wrestling. I'm kind of a lapsed wrestling fan. I loved it in like the early 90s and mid 90s, but this was shortly after his Golden Globe win that he appeared on AEW, and they kind of play into that. And you can tell that, Paul Walter Hauser, under his sort of all of his acting and all his acting chops, you can tell that he's a blue collar guy, and he gets what wrestling is, and he understands the camp of it, and he really played into it. This was a great appearance. He gets his Golden Globe award actually stolen, and
he gets beaten in the head with it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he gets beaten in the head with it, and then he gets a guitar over his head. And there's also a clip out there of his pre ringside interview that he did backstage, and it's so strange and bizarre because he has those three Wolf Moon t-shirts.
Yeah.
Remember those?
I love those.
He has a like 3 Wolf Moon t-shirt, but instead of the wolves, it's just a bunch of pictures of Robert Duvall, and it says Robert Duvall on it, and it's just like, what is this? What is this appearance? And so I don't normally watch wrestling, but I would encourage anybody to go look up the clips of Paul Walter Hauser on AEW.
It's all good fun. It was a lot of good fun. Sorry, I was distracted. Otherwise, I would have compartmentalized the video a little bit, because mine, it's kind of hard to see, but like if you're a Amazon Prime member, there's an awesome little thing that you can do where you just get games for free, for them. And if you think of it, you can hop onto your Prime Gaming account and see what's available to you. And for some reason, they're giving away like $100 worth of SNK games. SNK being the classic Japanese developer and console creator of the Neo Geo. And these were always my favorite games in the arcade to play. Shout out to the Pied Piper and the Dickinson, Prairie. No, I forget what the name of that mall even was. It's dying. That's all that matters. But the Pied Piper's still fucking there, I think. And they had Metal Slug and, King of Fighters. And so I picked up as many of them as I could, and I tried them all out. They even included an anniversary collection that has like 100 fucking games in it. I'm exaggerating, but more than you could ever think of. Like, did you know that there's like Ikari Warrior 7? You can play it. You get it for free. But yeah, awesome. So I just encourage everyone to take advantage of shit like this, because I took stock, and out of all of the ownership of that I have of digital licenses, I have more games free now in my library that I could install on my computer right now, and it's because of shit like this. I don't know how anyone's making any money in this sphere anymore. I'm bleeding these fuckers dry, and you should too, because they're just giving it away.
What I'll add to what you're saying is, in my opinion, you should go and get these, because this is one of the only ethical ways to play these games now, because the SNK games are now owned by the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
No. No.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I'm so sad now. Oh no.
Yeah, and SNK is owned by the Saudi Crown Prince, who's a piece of shit. And
you just ruined you ruined my day, man. But yeah, because that's what I mean. Like, if you want Metal Slug 10, that's like $10 on Steam. They're just giving it to you this way, and you don't got to give blood money to that fucker. Jesus.
Yeah. So go get these for free. Don't pay money for these games.
I'm so upset now. But you shouldn't be upset if you watched really anything that we talked about this week. It was a pretty good week. Not a dog really to be seen. And yeah, definitely, stick around. We will be returning to the retrospective after next week, because guess what? Guess who can fucking see Infinity Pool? This guy can. Because that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So if you can find yourself free on Thursday, see if your theater has it and watch it, so you can join us while we talk about it next Saturday. But yeah, that kind of does it for us here at From the Mezzanine. Thank you, Matt, and thank you to everyone who watched.
See ya.
See ya.